Hey, how you doing? Welcome to the, what's the name of this podcast of yours again? Okay, Tony, stop. Get off the microphone. Get off the microphone. Whoa, you told me I could do an episode. No, I told you you're having one of your episodes. Now get out of here. I am so sorry about that. I do voices and voice acting, as I've mentioned in episode 2, and sometimes they just get a little rowdy. Hey, I heard that! Anyway, jokes aside, welcome back to the Saved as Draft podcast, the only podcast where I, Bradley Ramsey, talk to you about the craft of writing, what I'm working on, and why you should care. Let's get into it. Okay, so let's start with our intro and shout-outs for the week. I'm so excited that I get to do some this week. I'll get into it later, but my goodness, has it been the craziest week since we last spoke, on Substack specifically, but also on Vocal, to be honest. But let me not get distracted, because otherwise this episode will last an hour and a half. To kind of just throw some details your way right here at the beginning, last week, I'm pretty sure I said that I had 30 subscribers. I want to say it was around 30, might be like 22. 7 days later, we're at 200 and something now. Wrap your head around that one. I don't know how it happened. Well, I kind of do, but damn, you know? And the reads, goodness, the reads. I think I last looked, it was 1.4K total reads already. I've been on Substack for 3 weeks, people. This is crazy. I'm not used to this level of growth. And I know, like I said, I know kind of where it's coming from. I had a post that's actually still getting likes that I'll talk about later in the podcast. And honestly, the experience has been almost entirely positive. There's a few bad eggs, but we'll talk about that later as well. And yeah, let's be honest. None of this is really possible without your support. Not only the readers, but my fellow writers, artists, designers, musicians, artists of every kind, every creative medium there is. I've seen so many cool people and met so many cool people in literally the last week. It feels like my entire life has just started. It's amazing. It feels fantastic. Okay, but like I said, to keep the episode from getting too long, in our intro and shoutouts section of the show here, each week I'll pick out a few writers that either I had direct conversations with, or I saw their work and I thought it was really amazing and I wanted to talk about it. So first up this week is an author named Shel Schneider. Shel's currently working on the 3rd book in her Parallels series, and the new title will be called Forgotten Parallels. All the books in Shel's series take place in multiple universes and feature superstar singers who come together with alternate versions of themselves to fight against things like hatred and bigotry using magical music. I'll just stop there for a second. Holy crap! That's cool. That is really cool. Forgotten Parallels, the book that they're working on now, takes place in a world where music has been outlawed and women's rights have been taken from them. So they have to find the music star to make things right again. If this sounds as cool to you as it does to me, you can check out some free chapters of the book on Shel's website, www.shellschneider.gay, which is awesome. I didn't even know that was a domain. I will also put the link in the show notes. Okay, next up is a writer named Isabella Neshawat, and I'm hoping I pronounced that right. I just discovered Isabella's work on Substack this week as well. Like I said, it's been a crazy week. Her style mixes classical Greek mythology with modern storytelling to create new tales that feel both familiar and new. Her latest story is called Heartburn, and it's told from the perspective of Hestia, as she's trapped in her father Kronos' stomach. I know it sounds weird, but if you've heard the story from Greek mythology about Kronos eating his children, it's a fascinating read, especially as it's being told from a different perspective. Now, I'll leave it at that, because between the title and the premise, I think you can tell where this is going. And let me tell you, I helped her edit the piece after she reached out and asked for a second pair of eyes, and it's phenomenal. Phenomenal. I would classify it as somewhere between a flash fiction and a short story, so it doesn't take very long to read, but goodness, will it stay with you. Highly recommend it. Next up, we've got Odessa Blaine. Odessa and I met on Blue Sky in the last few weeks, and she invited me to a meeting with the Broadleaf Writers Association, which I went to this past week. The group does require paid membership, but I went to a free meeting, and you're able to go to one meeting for free if you want to check it out. You get meetings, writing support, and even the chance to be featured on their YouTube channel if you're a paid member. Let's talk about the meeting. It was great. They had some guest speakers. I think it was 4 total. They had some guest speakers that were there talking about the highs and lows of publishing their novels and some of the challenges they've run into. They also had some Q&A at the end, so I was able to throw out a question. In particular, what I asked was, what's a story that you've always wanted to tell but you haven't? And why? What's stopping you? And I'll tell you, their answers were fascinating. They actually mirror a story of my own, an idea, I guess you could say. It would take too long to tell you the whole story here, so we'll save it for a future episode. But suffice to say, the reasoning for them not writing their kind of big idea was very similar to mine, so it made me feel pretty good. I'm seriously considering getting a membership, and if you're interested, the Broadleaf Writers Association's website will be in the show notes. With Odessa's permission, I'm also going to share a story that I consider a writing tragedy. You see, folks, Odessa's laptop had an unfortunate accident. I don't think I need to tell you how painful it is to lose a computer, let alone the one you write on, and in this case, a gaming laptop. And as a gamer, that one really stung. So, I won't go into all the details here. You can find her on Blue Sky if you're interested in hearing the whole story. She's posted about it. She's also posted about it on Substack. But suffice to say, it was a complete accident, but her computer did not survive the ordeal. So, I'd like to take a second as we commit her laptop's hard drive, motherboard, RAM, video card, and all its other components to the great Windows XP server in the sky. I'd like to take a moment of silence, for all the computers lost in the grand journey of becoming writers. Okay, and last shout out this week goes to Mary Ellen Brady. Mary Ellen and I met on Substack this week as well, and she's a poet. In case you're wondering, she does know it. I couldn't resist, I'm sorry. But she's very good, very good. So she and I were talking in a thread about poetry groups. Not really sure how the conversation started, to be honest. But we started talking about poetry groups, and one of us kind of threw out the idea of like, hey, why don't we start a poetry group on Substack? I haven't seen one, and as far as I know, Mary Ellen hasn't seen one either. So, that's how it happened. And the name that we came up with for our little poetry publication / group is the Soulful Poets Collective. And before you ask, it's got nothing to do with Taylor Swift's Tortured Poets thing. I honestly had forgotten that existed, and I do not want anybody associating it, despite the fact that I just brought it up. So please, just forget that. Please. I wanted a name that sounded profound and filled with longing. You know, like a good poem. Stay tuned for more news as we set the group up. And you can find me on Substack and let me know if you want to join. And when we actually launch it, I'll do a post and tag everybody who's already expressed interest. All right, next up is our segment called This Week in Writing. And it's been another crazy week. Not quite as much as the prior week, but that's just because I've been spending a lot of time, well, working, obviously, but also doing a lot of networking, checking out other writers' work on Substack, and you'll figure out why in a minute here when I get to something that happened this week. It's a good thing, but dear Lord, have I been busy, and will continue to be busy. So let's start off with my 5-part series on Substack called Her Voice. This was my biggest story ever from a reads and audience and just engagement standpoint. It's not the longest story I've ever written, but it is the biggest in terms of popularity. For those of you who haven't read it, it features a fictional disease called lingua that spreads through communication and language. So by hearing somebody who's infected talking, you become infected. And I know that sounds crazy, and to be honest, I didn't even know if it was going to be an idea that would work, but I did the research. I actually had a great conversation. Shout out to There Is a Doctor in the House is the name of the account on Blue Sky. That person was able to give me a ton of input on how to make the disease medically make sense. They are themselves a board-certified doctor, so it was a phenomenal resource. The series is 5 parts, and the 5th part is a choose-your-own-adventure with interactive links on Substack, just anchor links, nothing crazy, but it allows you to kind of click on your choices and be taken to whichever ending results in said choice, from said choice, excuse me. So check it out if you haven't. Let me know what you think. Leave a comment. And thanks again to everyone who read it. I mean, I'm so just blown away by how popular it is, and I'm excited to do a bunch more. And trust me, we're going to do a bunch more. For those who don't know, I've been publishing stories on Vocal, a different platform, for 4 years now. And I actually did an article this week about the 10 lessons I've learned in my 4 years there that I published over on Vocal. But suffice to say, I've done 87 stories over there, and I'm planning on moving all of them, maybe not all of them, but most of them, to Substack. And in doing so, I'm going to polish them. I'm going to revamp them. I'm going to maybe change up the endings or extend them. I'm going to leave myself open to ideas there. So I got all that to pull from, in addition to the fact that I'm just always coming up with new ideas. So it's going to be great. So another thing I wanted to call out this week is on Substack, I did a post. It was just a funny little joke. I mean, it wasn't even a joke. It was true, but I posed it as a joke. I said, if you're a creative human being, essentially, an artist, a writer, a musician, what have you, if you're creative in any way, shape, or form, I'm going to follow you. And then I said, I don't make the rules. And I did a little shrug emoji. And then immediately underneath that, I said, well, except I do, and that's one of them. And so it was just funny, and it just blew up. It blew up. I think it's up to almost 300 likes now, and 100 replies, maybe a little less. And so every single person that replied, you best believe I was in there following them back, subscribing, saying something nice about their work so that they didn't think I was some bot trying to farm subscriptions. And it was great. It was awesome. And honestly, a lot of subscriptions came from that little post. But hey, it only takes one. Something else this week that happened today, actually, before I recorded, was it was called You Deserve Pit over on Blue Sky. I posted about it on Substack. It's a pitch event. And pitch events, for those who aren't aware, I've only done like 3 or 4 of them. But the way they work is that you essentially, if your book is, within the parameters of the event itself, you can basically kind of put together what's called a mood board, like a visual representation of your book, and put a pitch in your post, and then you use a special hashtag. It's actually a few hashtags. And then it basically gets kind of set loose into this like one-day event. And people can like on it, they can comment, they can repost, all that good stuff. And with certain pitch events, they make it so that they ask people not to like the post. Like, if you want to comment or repost, that's fine. But they ask people not to like the post because in those events, only literary agents are supposed to like the post. And that's a way for people to figure out if a specific agent is interested in their work, which helps a lot with the querying process. Not that I would know, I haven't done it yet, but that's my understanding. This particular post, you can like, you can repost, you can do everything. It's just kind of, boosting other writers. And it went really well. I obviously pitched my cosmic horror novel for those about to vote. And it did great. Best event, I think, so far on Blue Sky, certainly. I want to say it was around 50 likes on my pitch and 20-something reposts. So not bad, not bad. I think the top performing post on the hashtag had like 300 likes. But hey, it was a good story, but it was kind of like, a romance type thing, which I'm sure, I'm not saying it's easier to get likes on something like that, but it's a little less niche than cosmic horror. I'm not trying to talk bad about anybody else's work. Everybody's writing, has its own unique twist and voice and tone. And I myself did romance novels when I was a ghostwriter, so I've got nothing to stand on, nor do I want to. Nothing wrong with those kind of books. I love my romance writers in my audience, on the podcast here, and, in the local community and all that. So please do not for a second think that I have any problem with romance novels. It's just they are popular, and that's why a lot of people do them. It makes sense. All right, next up is our segment on a weekly writing topic, and this is a topic, of course, about writing itself. So this week's episode, if you noticed, was titled Overnight Success, and that's our topic this week. It's all based on a conversation that I had on Blue Sky, where another writer and I were talking about Vocal, actually, and I made a joke about, hey, I just hit 1,000 reads on Vocal after 4 years. And I'm going to do an article about it because I promised myself I would when I hit that milestone. And the other person says, well, overnight success takes years, as they say. And I really like that because it's true, number one. Number two, it's a nice turn of phrase. So let's talk about it. What does success look like as a writer? Well, it's different for everybody. For some, it's traditional publishing. Others want to be self-published. For some people, they want to get published in a medical journal, write a paper, publish an essay, dissertation, all kinds of stuff like that. And here's the thing, whatever your version of success looks like, it's going to take time. I mean, there's definitely going to be examples in history where somebody just magically, got a publishing deal after they've been writing for like a couple of months. I'm sure it's happened. But that's not how the real world works, right? So remember that overnight success takes years. And, to talk a little bit about my situation, especially with the recent success on Substack, it's like, okay, so if we put it through that lens, am I successful? Well, yes and no. Here's the thing. I've enjoyed all this growth. It's phenomenal. And I love the fact that I'm communicating with so many writers and just being involved in the community. That, in and of itself, is a win and a major success. Yes. But, as I may have mentioned on a previous episode, and I'll probably mention it again, success for me is being published traditionally as an author. And not only that, but becoming a best-selling author. I've seen people on Threads, for example. There was this one writer, I forgot her name, but Stephen King shouted her out and talked about her book that's coming out. And let me tell you, people, if I get published and Stephen King says my book is good, yeah, that's success right there. Yeah, that'll do. That would be amazing. So that's what I'm going for. But regardless of what your goal is as far as success goes, writing and success is a formula that comes from consistency. You need to be there and showing up and publishing your work and putting it out there, and you need to do it consistently. And here's the thing. Consistently does not mean every single day, right? It can mean every week, every month. More is better, but pick a schedule and stick to it. That's what I mean by consistency, okay? And when you show up, don't compare yourself to others. Like, for example, I managed somehow, by the grace of the Substack gods, to get 200-something subscribers in the span of like a week, essentially. Okay, maybe 2 weeks. That's crazy. And you may not be there yet. But here's the thing. You will get there. You just have to trust in your own voice. Don't compare yourself to me or anybody else. Let your audience come to you. Okay? In my article on Vocal, about 10 lessons that I've learned in the 4 years publishing on there, I said at one point in the article that you need to be your own biggest fan first. Then others will join you. Okay? Let's say that again. You need to be your own biggest fan. You need to be your number one fan. You got to be the biggest fan of your work, and that energy will attract others to you. Okay? So let's wrap it up. Overnight success. It's not real. And if it is, it's like winning the lottery. It doesn't happen very often, okay? So don't get down on yourself. Remember that it takes time. Keep going. And as I always say, your art deserves to exist. Remember that. All right, next we have a new segment of the podcast that I'm calling Bradley's Substack Soapbox. And that's because I love alliteration. But also, this goes back to a time when I wrote an email newsletter for my fellow coworkers at GameStop, and that's a whole extra story. But back then, I would put together a weekly email newsletter about what happened in GameStop employee world that week. And I had a soapbox that I just had in the newsletter. And I always used it as a place to just go on a rant, which was funny to people because if you know me, I'm not really the kind of person to rant on things. But let's be honest, I have opinions. So let's get into it. This is the first ever Bradley's Substack Soapbox. In today's segment, I'm going to rant about something that's on my mind. Something that grinds my gears. Something that boils my noodles. Peels my potato. Stuff like that. Great, now I'm hungry. Anyway, this week's Substack Soapbox rant is called Negative Nellies in the writing community. So let's get started. I know that social media can be the worst of what humanity has to offer. I do. I've seen it. And not only have I seen it, I've seen how it affects other people, especially women online. They get treated far worse than any man, and that's just the long and short of it. That's the truth, especially on social media. So it's not great, right? But here's the thing. The writing community on social media is positive, supportive, wonderful people. 99.9% of the time. And I hold this community to that standard, right? So then the question becomes, well, what about the 0.1%? The ones that not even sanitizer can kill. Metaphorically, of course. Well, in those cases, they say, don't feed the trolls, and they're right. But my advice is to try a kill them with kindness, metaphorically, approach. Here's an example. I had one person out of the almost 100 people who responded to my viral, if you want to call it viral, post the other day on Substack. And this post caught me off guard. It was this person that just popped into a series of positive posts, and they popped in and they said, "Oh, well, you're just following, creative people because you're trying to spam and you're trying to farm engagement, and this kind of practice is gross. It's not a good look." Is pretty much what they said. I'm paraphrasing. And also, they probably don't sound like that, but they might. So let's talk about it. That's not cool, number one, okay? I'm not trying to farm followers. I'm also not trying to game the system and get a bunch of subscribers. Keep in mind, these are all free subscribers. They're not paid. It's not like I'm trying to, grift people out of their money like a lot of people in today's world. I won't get into that right now. But it's just ridiculous to make that claim, right? So I responded to them, and, to be honest, I'm a little petty. I did not like their post, even though I liked every other post around it. Okay, that's fair. I think that's fair. But I responded, and I said, hey, I know that people use this tactic for the wrong reasons. But as you can see, if you look, I'm actually responding to every single person here. I'm subscribing back, and I've already started working my way down the list from the top to read at least one piece of everyone's work. So if you look at it that way, I'm not trying to scam anybody. I'm not being spammy. I'm legitimately excited to be here, a part of the community, and I want to help out my fellow writers. So I said that to them in my post, and then I said, I realize that might not be enough to convince you, that I'm doing this for the right reasons, but I want you to know that I followed you, and I subscribed, just like everybody else in this list, and I hope that that's enough for you to give me a chance to prove myself. And I know you're sitting there nodding, being like, yeah, okay, in a perfect world or a movie maybe, somebody is going to be like, wow, you know what? That changes my entire worldview. Thank you. No, I know. But here's the thing. They liked my response. They didn't say anything else. But I kind of see that as the Substack equivalent of, like, we're mortal enemies, but we kind of spotted each other from across the street, like, looking at each other, and we kind of made eye contact and did one of those little, like, half nods. And it's like, all right, I see you. Okay, we cool. That kind of thing. Either that or it was just them rage liking it. I have no idea. Another example is earlier today, I saw someone posting that they were essentially accosted for using hashtags in their Substack post. And I immediately responded, and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, they actually never responded to my post. I hope they didn't think I was being mean. But I was like, are you kidding me? Like, who cares that you used hashtags? Like, yeah, they don't work on Substack, but that doesn't mean somebody should come in there and, like, make them feel horrible. They just got here. Come on. And it's like what I've been saying. We're all in this together. Our shared success happens when we lift each other up. So just do that. Knocking each other down doesn't do anything but make you look like a fool, and it's an easy way to get blocked in today's day and age. The world sucks. I'm not going to try and sugarcoat it, but I think the takeaway here from my first soapbox rant is that I want us to be the people who make a crappy world a little bit better. Deal? Deal. I'm going to skip the gaming and podcast segment this week because I actually haven't played much. I've been so busy, and to be honest, I'm just listening to Astonishing Legends. And if you want to listen to a podcast about crazy urban legends, cool stories, and cryptids, please check it out. The two hosts are a riot. Great podcast. All right, final section. And we're making pretty good time this week. So next week's goals and my focus. Let's wrap it up, okay? Next week, I'm going to publish my other Choose Your Own Adventure that I've written. It's called The Highway at the End of the World. This is a really cool sci-fi Choose Your Own Adventure set on a planet where an entire race of humanoid creatures, I'll say, I don't really describe what they look like, but an entire race of creatures are trapped on this planet, and they've been enslaved by the locals that live there and basically forced to work in their mines and stuff like that. And this alien race that arrived on the planet, they were refugees, and they can't breathe the air on the planet, so they all wear these biosuits in order to survive. And the biosuits are powered by this element called Plutarch. And the Choose Your Own Adventure here, it's actually written in second person, like the classics. You basically are with your partner, and you've been sent on this mission to find more of the Plutarch to power your suits. and your partner is already unconscious and fading fast. So you need to make a decision. Are you going to follow the orders from your slave masters and go just find the mineral like they asked? Or are you going to try and go a different direction? And I won't spoil it from there. In total, there are 2 paths and 4 possible endings. I'm really excited for you to check this out. When I published it on Vocal originally, it got a top story award and people loved it. So I'm excited to see what my Substack subscribers think. In the meantime, if you haven't checked out my story, it's a 3-part series on my Substack called The Unfathomable Beast of Xanadu 4. I highly suggest you check it out. It's a different style of mine. It's more sarcastic, more witty, but it's very fun and it packs an emotional punch. I would love it if you gave it a shot. Leave a comment. Let me know what you think. This coming week, my focus is going to be finishing up the first 2 chapters of my novel. As I mentioned in a prior episode, I went back and added some stuff to the beginning of the novel, so I'm going to finish that, and then I'm going to go back to roughly the midway point where I left off and keep on pushing forward in this first draft. I'm also going to do a new story set in a realm that I call Divine. And I'll take just a few more minutes of your time here to explain what Divine is. It started on Vocal, and I have several stories there that I'll probably migrate over to Substack. But Divine is a realm that I created. It's a connected universe, so there's a bunch of stories that are kind of set in different parts of it. And it's a world where magic and fantasy and elves and dwarves and dragons and all that stuff exists. But here's the twist. Science, technology, aliens, alternate dimensions, those things exist too. And in these stories, those 2 things clash, and boy, can it get crazy. It's a really fun world with a lot of possibilities. So this week, I got a prompt from a writer on Substack named E.D. Jones, and the prompt involved a soldier going through a portal only to discover an underground kingdom. Well, as soon as I heard the word kingdom, I was like, well, that's it. I'm writing a Divine story. And so I've been brainstorming it, and I've pitched it to a few writers, including the person who gave me the prompt, and everybody's loving it. I'll give you a little sneak peek. How's that? So it stars a Navy SEAL who goes on a mission on Earth only to discover a tear that leads to the realm of Divine. And when he gets there, he discovers an underground dwarven kingdom. The kingdom is currently on the brink. They've been digging, as dwarves do, deep into the earth, and they've uncovered and awoken an eldritch monstrosity. With the kingdom about to be taken over and destroyed by this monster, this Navy SEAL offers to go back to Earth and grab our weapons because he thinks it may give them a fighting chance. So get ready for dwarves with machine guns, grenades, rocket launchers, and anything else I can come up with. It's gonna be nuts! Sorry for the loud noise if you're wearing headphones. Love you. I love you all my subscribers. Phenomenal people, amazing human beings, and that extends to the writing community as well. Shout out, once again, to our writers. I don't have their names in front of me, but thank you so much for being willing to come on the podcast here in a virtual manner and let me talk about your work. I'm so excited to check it out myself, and I hope everyone has a fantastic and safe week. This is Bradley Ramsey, signing off.